Hi, I'm Mr. Les, currently pursuing PG certification on cybersecurity from MIT. Today we'll be talking about Equifax data breach. This is one of the largest data breaches in history, affecting over 147 million customers. Personally identifiable information, or PII, were exposed during this breach. This includes social security numbers, birth dates, and addresses. This case study aims to investigate the causes of Equifax hack, study of vulnerability, impact of Equifax breach, the technical and regulatory findings. We also look into NIST CSF with offensive and defensive security. Finally, we also look into lessons learned from this particular incident and prevention of future breaches. Let's dive into the next. So, agenda of this meeting, we shall cover following topics in this case study: introduction, breach timelines, the breach, regulations, laws, and contractual obligations, NIST CSF as offensive and defensive security, reaction, and aftermath. So the three largest national consumer reporting agencies, or what we call as CRAs, are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. These credit bureau companies play an important role in the lives of citizens by impacting their assets to a variety of necessities. For instance, lenders use credit card reports and credit reports as well as credit scores when approving loans. Landlords may check credit scores before granting leases, and employers may consider applicants' credit histories when making hiring decisions. Thus, credit agencies have a significant impact on the day-to-day activities of citizens. According to Equifax annual report published in 2021, Equifax was established in Atlanta, Georgia in 1899, and it became public in 1964. Equifax operates in 24 nations in North America, Central and South America, Europe, and Asia Pacific regions. It employs 14,000 people globally. It has more than 91 million organizations, and 820 million people have their credit files maintained by Equifax. As of 2022, they reported annual revenue of about 5 billion. It is publicly listed in New York Stock Exchange with EFX symbol. But in 2017, Equifax experienced a data breach that resulted in the theft of sensitive personal information belonging to approximately 146.6 million individuals. This includes names, social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, and driver's license number. The breach also included credit card information for about 200,000 consumers and dispute documents for an additional 182,000 people. The issue raised significant concern about data security and consumer protection and had major implications for Equifax in addition to customers who were impacted. The credit report agency company had also been criticized for responding slowly and failing to effectively safeguard sensitive customer data. A significant number of customers who were impacted by data leak were put at risk of financial fraud and identity theft. When news of Equifax data breach hit headlines, its stock prices dropped by 13% and continued to decline until it reached a low of $92 approximately, reducing 34% of company's capital value. Breach timelines. What really happened? Let's dive into timelines of data breach. March 6, 2017, Apache Software Foundation issued a statement about vulnerability in Apache Struct 2 web framework. We will talk about Apache vulnerability in technical details in coming slides. March 7, 2017, Apache Software Foundation released a patch for this vulnerability. March 8, 2017, that is following day, Department of Homeland Security Division Computer Emergency Response Team informs Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion about Apache Struct 2 vulnerability. On March 23rd, 2017, an exploit of CVE 2017 5638, so that is Apache Struct 2 vulnerability, is published in internet. In following days, the exploit is available in dark web as well as in hacker forums. Fast forward to October 2017, forensic analysis by a FireEye company called Mandiant defines initial breach date as March 10, 2017. On March 15, 2017, Equifax security team runs vulnerability scanners which fails to identify Apache 2 Struct 2 vulnerability CVE 2017 5638. As network traffic monitoring tool responsible for decrypting and checking traffic had expired SSL certificates. The certificates had expired back in 2016. May 13, 2017, attackers entered Equifax system through ACIS, that is Automated Consumer Interview System, which uses Apache Struct2 vulnerability version and executed web shells within the system, querying and navigating into different directories. From May 13, 2017 to July 30th, 2017, hackers gained unauthorized access to system and database and executed about 9,000 queries on 51 different databases. Attackers gained access to unencrypted password file and moved laterally to multiple Equifax systems and encrypting, transmitting customers' personal information to external servers. On July 29th, 2017, Equifax renews the expired SSL certificates for network monitoring tool of ASIC systems. This renewal of certificate enables the network monitoring tool to identify suspicious data traffic, and Equifax security team blocks the suspicious traffic. The following day, on July 30th, 2017, Equifax security team detects additional suspicious traffic and takes down ASIC system. July 31st, 2017, CEO of Equifax, Mr. Richard Smith, is informed about the incident by Mr. David Webb, Chief Information Officer of about the security incident. On August 1st and 2nd of 2017, according to news report by CNN as well as SEC filing, Security Exchange Commission filings, Equifax Chief Financial Officer John Gamble sold shares worth nearly $950,000. Joseph Legron, Equifax President for US Information Solutions, sold equities worth about $685,000. And Rodolphe Plauder, President of Workforce Solutions, sold stocks for just about $250,000. The Equifax stocks were offloaded before public disclosure of data security by senior executives. Though they were cleared later, 2 executives were charged with insider trading as per CNBC report and Justice Department. On August 2nd, 2017, legal firm King & Spalding is hired along with cybersecurity firm Mandiant, which is a FireEye company, for legal and forensic review. Federal authorities are also informed about data breach in August. What follows in August, on 24th of August to 25th of August in 2017, Equifax Board of Directors are informed about data breach and the number of customers impacted by CEO of the company. On September 7, 2017, CEO and Chairman of Equifax, Mr. Richard Smith, notified to public of massive data breach. This public notification is available in Equifax YouTube channel. On September 8th, in less than 24 hours of notification, separate suits are filed in Portland, Oregon, and North Georgia U.S. District Courts on violation of Credit Reporting Company of negligence and violation of U.S. Fair Credit Reporting Act. Oregon complaint reportedly seeks out $70 billion in damages for residents of that state alone. So on September 8th, 2017, multiple scammers offered to sell stolen Equifax data for 600 bitcoins or 8,000 Ethereum, roughly $2.7 million then. To prove they have access to Equifax data, they reportedly leaked data records of prominent individuals like Kim Kardashian and Bill Gates. On September 14, 2017, Congress, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, and the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology launched an investigation into the Equifax data breach. On September 15, 2017, Equifax CIO David Webb and CSO, Chief Security Officer Susan Mauldin, retires from Equifax. What follows is a string of news reports. One such report is Washington Post report. Quote, it turns out that Mauldin, the top executive handling cybersecurity at Equifax, didn't have much formal training in technology. She had studied music composition at the University of Georgia. This was the smoking gun that to prove Mauldin's obvious unfitness for the job. With a Bachelor of Arts and Master of Fine Arts, Mauldin's record betrayed a lack of education qualification for her job, unquote. So this is the quote from the Washington Post. Now, September 26, 2017, Equifax CEO Richard Smith retires. On October 9, 2017, Graham Payne, the Senior Vice President and CIO for Global Corporate Platforms, is terminated for failing to forward March 9 email alert from Department of Homeland Security. On October 3, 2017, ex-CEO Mr. Richard Smith testifies before the Subcommittee on Digital Commerce and Consumer Protection of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. Equifax was fined 500,000 by British Authority Information Commission Office in September 2018. Since breach occurred before EU's GDPR in May 2018. So the GDPR only came into enforcement on May 2018, but the Equifax breach had occurred before May 2018. Hence, Equifax was not fined under GDPR. GDPR fines 4% of annual global revenue of the company with potential sanctions. So March 31st, 2019, Equifax reported 82 million spent on security cost on data and application, 12 million quarterly legal and investigation fees, and 1.5 million in product liability. So in April 2019, Canadian authorities, Privacy Commissioner enforces compliance to Canadian Personal Information Protection and Electronic Data Documents Act and Federal Private Sector Privacy Law. Privacy Commissioner required the Equifax Canadian division to submit third-party audit reports on both its security and parent company security to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner every 2 years for the next 6 years. In June 2019, Moody's slashes Equifax financial rating due to massive investment needed by Equifax in its cybersecurity infrastructure. In July 2019, Equifax agreed for 1.38 billion settlement that required Equifax to spend 125 million for consumer cash compensation, 175 million to settle state attorneys general investigations, 100 million to resolve investigation from CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and FTC, Federal Trade Commission. In February 2020, New York Times reports 4 state-sponsored officers are charged by US Justice Department. The breach. Cyber kill chain framework is developed by Lockheed Martin, which is part of intelligence-driven defense model for identification and deterrence of cyber attacks using 7 phases: reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, and actions. Reconnaissance, it is the usage of Google docking using certain search text. As you see here, we see in title, struts problem report, in text, development mode is enabled. This enables to find all the websites which are using vulnerable Apache Struct 2 versions. It also uses open source intelligence, that is threat intelligence tools. Equifax Automated Consumer Intrusion System, that is ACIS, was used to gather customer credit information. This system had Apache Struct 2 vulnerability. ACIS system was a legacy system. Weaponization. Attackers used exploits available for CVE 2017-5638, which is Apache Struct 2 vulnerability. It included a Jakarta multi-part parser in Apache Struct 2 for certain versions that had incorrect exception handling during file upload attempts or exception in the header. This allowed remote command to be executed in header name content type by passing payload hash command equal to any kind of command which you pass. It could be a ls or a cat command. The incorrect header value for content type could evaluate the expression command as a OGNL expressions. We'll talk about this in our technical findings. Delivery and exploitations. SSL visibility application monitoring tool decrypted outbound network traffic for analysis. This tool had its SSL certificate expired back in 2016. Attackers gained access to Automated Consumer Intrusion System ACIS and databases containing personal identifiable information and exfiltrated data for 78 days before detection. The password file was stored unencrypted once attackers gained access. They were able to exfiltrate to other systems. Attackers moved around Equifax system, executed approximately 9,000 queries on 51 databases. Sun Solaris operating system hosted Automated Consumer Intrusion System in a shared file system that allowed access to admin files across all systems. This falls under install, command, and control. Administrators used default and weak passwords. The database name used was a 4-letter password. Staff stored unencrypted credentials in file. Automated Consumer Intrusion System, or ACIS as abbreviated, had excessive access permissions to other systems, though they were not required as part of ACIS system. Intrusion detection system could not detect and block suspicious traffic due to expired SSL certificate. The next part is actions. Once company uploaded new SSL certificates, tools started decrypting and analyzing network traffic. The suspicious activity was traced to an IP address in a different country. Automated Consumer Intrusion System (ACIS) is taken offline, and Mandiant, a FireEye company, is hired for forensic analysis. In following days, CIO, Chief Information Officer, Chief Security Officer, and CEO retires, and the press headlines reads, Equifax hired a music major as a Chief Security Officer, and she just retired. Ex-CEO Richard Smith testified under oath to Congress blaming need for patch and human error. So let's talk about technical breach. The breach here we will discuss is based on Apache Struts, which is a Java-based web framework. Apache Struct 2 with version 2.2.3 before 2.3.32 and 2.5. Before 2.5.10.1 has vulnerability CVE 2017-5638. Input validation is used for executing a remote command. This vulnerability has CVSS-v3 score of 10, which is critical. This signified the severity of security flaw. Hackers could also use Google dorking by using keyword-based search terms to find security vulnerability across internet. List of Google dorking search tags are available online in exploit-db.com. To find vulnerable website using Apache Struct 2, you can notice the following dorking search text was used. In title, struts problem report. In text, development mode is enabled. There is also an Nmap tool which can detect whether specified URL is vulnerable to Apache Struct. Remote code execution vulnerability can also be identified using this particular Nmap tool. According to Apache, the root cause is in Jakarta multipart parser used in Apache Structs. When exception is thrown for invalid value provided in content type header, the payload passed is executed. The exception changes parser from data scope to execution scope for payload. From below illustrations, we can see URL header content type is passed with payload curl command, which is ONGL, which is Object Graph Notation Language Expression. When exception occurs, OGNL expression is evaluated. Here you can see from the highlighted text, hash command equal to percentages, and you can see the payload as CMD. OGNL expressions here contains Java code. Here you can notice java.lang.runtime at getruntime.exec. This particular piece of code executes past command payload in web shell. Python exploit is also available in exploit-db.com. Another exploit framework called Metasploit also got published, which the code is available in MSF console of Kali Linux. In case of Equifax, attackers gained access to password files which were not encrypted, thus providing credentials to other systems and database. This is done by passing hash command equal to cat/etc/passwd. While patching and framework upgradations are necessary, Web Application Firewall also allows users to control traffic by whitelisting only certain headers and whitelisting only certain header values. Zero-day attack detection mechanism, denial of shell command executions, and directory permissions restrictions should also be considered. SSL installed in Equifax traffic monitoring tool expired in 2016, thus making intrusion detection system necessary for decrypt and analyzing the network became inept. Though on March 14, 2017, Information Security Team of Equifax configures SNOT rule to detect Apache Struct 2 vulnerability, expired SSLs made IDS inept. Several hundreds of SSL certificates had expired, thus not alerting Information Security Team on repeated data breaches. Equifax ACIS application stores credit card payment details and processes about 6 million credit card transactions per year. Hence, Equifax was classified as level 1 merchant, requiring stringent adherence to 12 requirement categories of PCI DSS, which is Data Security for PCI Security Standards Council. All of 12 requirements were not adhered, thus not meeting contractual obligations as a merchant. As per US House of Representative report, Equifax Chief Security Officer Moldin testified, the PCI preparation started about a year before. Quote, but it's very complex. It was very complex environment. She goes on to say, plan fell behind and these items did not get addressed, unquote. Federal Trade Commission FTC regulates the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, the Financial Service Modernization Act of 1999 called Graham-Lee-Bliley Act, GLBA, and Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, known as DFA, and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, formed under DFA, is responsible for protecting consumer data and shares certain aspects of FCRA. US states have privacy laws that require CRAs to notify consumers of data breaches, and nearly all states have strong consumer protection laws that prohibits certain or similar unfair and deceptive acts and practices. The credit reporting agencies must also be PCI DSS compliant and comply with regulatory requirements specified by Federal Financial Institutions Council (FFIEC). Thus, FTC and CFPB lacked proactive checks for CRA's compliance. State and attorney generals did not proactively perform data security checks. So in this diagram, you can see regulation, laws, and contract. So Equifax is regulated by Federal Trade Commission, FTC, as well as CFPB. CFPB is Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It is also regulated by state laws related to breach notification laws, consumer protection laws, social security number, mandatory protection laws, which is present in multiple US states, as well as California Consumer Protection Act. So it, Equifax should also adhere to certain contractual obligations as it is part of Federal Financial Institution Council member. Since it processes credit card information, it should also adhere to PCI DSS. Moving on to the next slide. So we talk about different NIST CSF frameworks, which could be used as offensive and defensive security. Before that, let us talk about IAM controls that are part of NIST Identity and Access Management. The IAM, Identity and Access Management Control Framework, has subparts: mandatory access controls, discretionary access controls, attribute-based access controls, role-based access controls, rule-based access controls, client access controls, network IAM. So what is mandatory access control? It is the ability of users of vital infrastructure to enforce administrative rights is either very restricted or non-existent. It is the least amount of permission needed to carry out their duties. Only necessary workers must be given admin privileges. Every employee with administrative privilege must undergo routine background checks and be a subject matter expert to manage such delicate critical infrastructure. Every piece of information should be categorized as public, confidential, secret, or top secret. Moving on to discretionary access controls. It is privileged users who produce data and distribute it to other users who must specify which users will have access to it and for how long. Attribute-based access controls uses user attributes, resource attributes, and environment attributes, which are defined in order to identify users, data, and environment. Critical infrastructure should have least professional with cybersecurity trained. Role-based access controls. Role-based access controls. It is the degree of security clearance which determines a role. Only users who fit a certain job can access the data that is limited by classification and security levels. Rule-based access controls. It is ACLs, abbreviated from Access Control List. Reviews of these lists are necessary to decide which source IP address and ports with user credentials are allowed to connect into critical infrastructure and for how long each day. Client access controls. This includes bring your own devices, vendor management policies. It also tracks the position of device, sets session timeouts, disables user accounts, encrypts the disk, and patches the system if it is lost or stolen. These are network controls, which is network IAM, in accordance with network access standards, only limit authorized users to access the network. Let's move on to NIST CISF. NIST CISF is used for security strategy and framework, provides complete and comprehensive strategy for security. Additional NIST SP 882 provides a framework for industrial control system security. This covers SCADA, distributed control systems, and PLCs. IEC 62443 is Industrial Automation and Control System Security, which is global standard for ICS networks. This details standards, policies, procedures, and components of ICS. NIST IR 8259 is series of documents detailing cybersecurity activities for IoT devices. This defines US federal IoT cybersecurity requirement for security and privacy controls. NIST CSF has 5 main functions which are subdivided into 23 categories. The main functions are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So offensive security and defensive security are part of NIST functions. So offensive security deals with penetration testing, cloud security testing, app security testing, social engineering, red blue team. While defensive security takes care of infrastructure protection, incident response, disaster recovery or BCP, and digital forensics, as well as defense in depth. NIST as a defensive security strategy helps in layered approach for security controls and protections, as referred to as defense in depth. Defensive security contains NIST 853, which covers security controls and family as access control, configuration management, and incident response. ISO 27002 standard under defensive security framework details threat intelligence OSINT, as well as physical security, monitoring, and secure coding. Moving on to the next slide, reaction. In this slide, we'll discuss about data that was breached, how it has impacted customers, vulnerabilities, and regular shortcomings. The data breach are first name, last name, social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, driver license numbers. Impacted customers are about 143 million US consumers. There are some Canadian consumers and about 1.2 million UK consumers. What were the vulnerability and shortcomings? The flaw in Apache Struct 2 web application framework, which we discussed in the previous slides, is one of the main shortcomings that led to the incident. Apart from that, working exploit for this particular vulnerability was available in GitHub in March 2017. Most Equifax board members have expertise in international business and other topics, but only 2 out of 12 have any cybersecurity background. During data breach, Equifax chief security officer had major in music composition degree. As Washington Post reported, quote, didn't have much formal training in technology. She later retired from Equifax. What were the regulatory shortcomings? Credit reporting agencies are regulated and monitored by federal law, that is the Fair Credit Reporting Act, as well as Financial Service Moderation Act, GLBA, DFA. These regulations are imposed by FTC as well as Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. State regulations on breach notification laws, consumer protection laws, and social security mandatory protection, California Consumer Privacy Act, all these state regulations enforce data security. Since Equifax is level 1 merchant, as it processes more than 6 million credit card transactions per year, PCI DSS has 12 requirement category compliance. Equifax, as partner in Federal Financial Institution Council, must comply to its standards. So these are some testimonials and reports released by House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Mr. Graham Payne, formerly Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Global Corporate Platforms at Equifax, in his testimony to House of Representatives investigation about legacy system ACIS, quote, ACIS was the dispute and disclosure system that was built in the late 1970s to address requirements of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, unquote. Mr. Russ A.S., Equifax Interim Chief Security Officer, in his testimony to the House of Representative investigations. ACIS only needed access to 3 databases to function, but it was unnecessarily connected and had access to many more, unquote. In his testimony to House of Representative investigation about PCI DSS non-compliance by Equifax former Chief Information Security Officer, the PCI preparation started about a year before, but the plan fell behind and these items did not get addressed, unquote. House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, Congress, observed in a 96-page report released on December 2016. These are some of the main quotes. The culture of cybersecurity compliance. The breach was entirely preventable, unquote. Quote, failed to fully appreciate and mitigate cybersecurity risk, unquote. Quote, the scan was on the root directory, not the subdirectory where the Apache struct was listed, unquote. Quote, the ACIS system was not segmented off from other unrelated databases, unquote. This clearly showed the IT team not fully aware about the scanning tools. Moving on to the next slide. So in the aftermath of the data breach in Equifax, so Equifax stocks in September 7th, 2017, which traded in New York Stock Exchange as EFX symbol, finished at $142 approximately and tumbled to $98 approximately on September 14th, 2017. It is a drop of 31%, wiping off about 5.3 billion capitalization of Equifax. Equifax incurred 1.4 billion in data breach cleanup cost. FTC, CFPB, and local laws are the 2 federal agencies with primary oversight responsibility for credit reporting agencies. FTC was given responsibility for administrative enforcement of credit reporting agencies' compliance with Fair Credit Reporting Act as well as GLBA. CFPB was given authority to enforce DFA as well as Consumer Protection Act, Federal Consumer Financial Laws, including Fair Credit Reporting Act, CCPA, California Consumer Protection Act, breach notification laws of 50 states, mandatory protection of social security numbers, payment card industry data security standards, PCI DSS, and Federal Financial Institution Council, FFIEC security standards. Multiple class action suits in September 2017. Federal Court, Portland, Oregon, a class action suit for $70 billion is filed. Document alleged Equifax knew and should have known that failure to maintain adequate technological safeguards would eventually result in a massive data breach. Equifax could have substantially increased the amount of money it spent to protect against cybersecurity attacks, but chose not to, unquote. In August 2022 lawsuit filed by US District Court in North Georgia with trial by jury, document alleges swing a borrower's credit rating from good to fair or fair to poor due to Equifax technical breach caused by data breach. In United Kingdom, on 20th September 2018, Information Commissioner's Office fined highest possible fine under law, that is £500,000 after it failed to protect 15 million Britain's data. In July 2019, Equifax had agreed to pay 575 million and potentially up to 700 million as part of global settlement with FTC and CFPB and 50 US states and territories which alleged that company failed to take reasonable steps to protect its network that led to data breach. In February 2020, the US District Department indicted 4 foreign officers for perpetrating the 2017 Equifax Act. Thank you. Please feel free to reach me on this particular email address, pistol.s@outlook.com. These are the following references, and more readings could be done in this particular references. Thank you very much.